Wow, what an episode. That episode was, IGN might say, a 6 out of 10. I gotta say, like an 8 out of 10 for me. Ahsoka. Episode 4. Everything's coming together, baby. This episode is like, this show is kicking into gear. We are going to find Thrawn, maybe. I don't know. There's gonna be some stuff happening for sure. Will we find Ezra? Will we find Thrawn? I have to tune in next episode to find out. All right, so let's talk about what happened in this episode, and then I'm gonna dive into some stuff that like we need to talk about because there's a lot of stuff in this episode that just blew my mind. And before we jump into the synopsis, one of the things that I want to know from you is, how are you liking Ahsoka so far? And do you have a favorite fight scene? What do you think of the fight scenes in this show? Okay, let's jump into the synopsis. So we start off in this episode with Ahsoka, Sabine, and Huyang basically stranded on the planet's surface. They have no transmitters, and they basically want to get a signal out to get help, but their ship is kind of down in that capacity, so Huyang sets out to sort of try to fix the ship and repair it. Meanwhile, the bad guys are like, well, we gotta hunt those good guys down, and so that's what they aim to do. Yes, indeed. While Huyang is repairing the ship, a droid spots him, and he attacks. Fortunately, Huyang doesn't just have 2 arms, he has 4 arms, and he also... 4 arms, get it? And he also has tons of fighting experience in his memory bank, so he, well, he actually does struggle, though. He still kicks butt, but he struggles. But as they're fighting, the ship loses power, and Ahsoka and Sabine come out to help Huyang, and then they set out to try to get the map. Basically, it's known where they are, so they go out to get the map, and Huyang gives them one piece of advice. He says one thing. He says, don't split up, because you're better when you work together as a team. We're gonna come back to that. They immediately split up once they're confronted by Merrick and Shin. Sabine gets a pretty good rematch in here, although she still pretty much gets her butt kind of whooped, but at least she's able to like hold her ground. And while all this is happening, Ahsoka gets to basically kick Merrick's butt like really hard, like literally reduces Merrick to magic dust. We'll talk about that more later, but it basically quashes the theory that I and many others had out on the internet, so we'll talk about that more in a bit. After Ahsoka defeats Merrick, she runs to go get the map and basically disrupt the fact that the bad guys are trying to get the coordinates so they can get to Thrawn. And as she gets there, she's of course confronted by Balin and has to fight him in order to try to get the map. Skull basically defeats Ahsoka when her emotions start to get involved in their fights. He's trying to play on her connection to Anakin and obviously thereby Vader, and Ahsoka also gets affected by her emotions when Shin arrives and Sabine isn't with Shin, and she worries that something might have happened to her Padawan. However, Sabine arrives to basically just see Ahsoka get defeated, so see what happens when we split up. Ahsoka tells her to get the map and blast it with her sort of like last words, but Sabine grabs the map and does not blast it. The map, by the way, has already been disrupted. Ahsoka does that during her fight and burns her hand. Sabine picks it up, but ultimately is basically persuaded by Balin to hand it over. Enforcements do arrive to the planet in the form of General Hera, her son Jason Syndulla, who his name is also spelled like Jason Solo, and Carson Teva, and a bunch of random red shirt pilots. I'm sure nothing bad will happen to these pilots. Sure, they'll be fine. Having fully attained the coordinates, though, the bad guys decide they're gonna blast off into hyperdrive just as the pilots are all arriving, just as these reinforcements are arriving to the planet. And of course, as they blast off into hyperdrive in their ring ship, they don't go through them, but they definitely discombobulate them. Discombobulate.
Discombobulate.
By discombobulate, I mean about half of them don't really make it because they were definitely red shirts. We called that the most cliche thing I would say about this episode. The rest of it was pretty good, but that was pretty cliche. Of course, fortunately, Carson and Hera are fine. Phew. So we're totally good. Oh, I forgot. Chopper is also here. How could I forget Chopper? Chopper, if you're watching this, please don't come for me. I'm sorry that I forgot you. I'm afraid of Chopper. I feel like Chopper's a scary droid. At the end of the episode, Ahsoka wakes up. And, well, it might look like she's floating on water initially, somehow in the cosmos. It turns out she's on a light bridge, and possibly inside the Force, and possibly is not alive. She wakes up, stands on the bridge, and she is greeted by her master, Anakin Skywalker. That's right, Hayden Christensen's back again, baby! Hayden Christensen's getting paid. Love to see it. Very excited to have Anakin back, and as I launch into sort of my takeaways from this episode, I just want to say when Anakin came back, I did tear up when he started talking to Ahsoka. I just thought it was it's a pretty crazy moment when you think about the last time these two people saw each other for Ahsoka and sort of how that went.
I won't leave you.
Then you will die.
Oh, it's just heavy. And also everything that's happened, like, wow. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wait a minute. Is this what we're doing? Snips. I knew. And then I was like, okay, that's what we're doing. Okay. Anyways, that was basically my first point. I want to talk about Anakin Skywalker coming back. Hayden Christensen. So good. I'm very excited to see what happens in the next episode. But also, I hope Ahsoka lives, because is she dead? I hope not, because the name of this show is Ahsoka, so I don't see how we can do it without her. Unless she's guiding them from the Force? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, she was saved from a time mirror before, so I feel like odds are good she'll be fine. She has pretty good experience with, like, basically being dead and then not being dead anymore. So Merrick's identity was busted. Dust busted? That's not a thing people say. In this episode, when Merrick was defeated by Ahsoka and turned to dust. Magic dust or magic smoke, whatever you prefer. You know what they say, where there's smoke, there's magic dust that once was Merrick, apparently. And that is what happens in this episode. The running theory here is that Merrick was actually an Inquisitor, hence why he had the lightsaber, the double lightsaber that spins, and why he turned to dust is because Morgan Elsbeth, he was serving her and then died, and then she used her Night Sister magic to, like, bring him back in dust form. Well, in magic form, which is why he turns into magic dust. Look, this is a thing that apparently was in Clone Wars. I haven't watched Clone Wars, so I was very confused when I saw this happen, but that seems to be the way of it. I cannot say for sure. I don't know if that's the last we'll see of Merrick. Probably, because I guess they just hyperdrived out of there, but I don't know. He was pretty cool, so kind of hope it's not the last we see of him, to be honest. Speaking of cool people, you know who else is cool? Balin's skull is pretty cool. Possibly one of the best things about this episode, but I would argue that, like, literally everyone in this show is really doing a great job. So while Ray Stevenson as Balin Skull is obviously amazing, I mean, Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka is also amazing. So there is that. But why is Balin Skull cool? Well, I feel like the thing that I really like about him is that he seems already inherently complex. So right off the bat in this season, we learn that he's kind of like someone posing as a Jedi, and then it's like, oh, he probably was a former Jedi, but he wants to help bring back Thrawn, but he doesn't seem to be, like, super vibing with the dark side per se. It's interesting to see how, when you think about it, Balin and Ahsoka also have a lot in common. Like, they're kind of both a different idea of what the gray could be, is what I see. Because the interesting thing about Balin is that he still seems to definitely, like, sort of walk the Jedi way and follow, sort of represent a lot of their ideals, but at the same time, he's allying himself with the Empire. But he's not, like, dark side. He's, like, light side with the dark side. He's like a dark Jedi. He's not really like a Sith Lord or anything like that. Although he's called Lord Balin in this, but it's not a Sith name, so I think we're good. I think that's, like, maybe respect that Morgan's like Lord Balin. Just like how Hu Yang's like Lady Tano. The fights in this show, speaking of Balin and Ahsoka, are amazing, especially the fight between them, but honestly, all of the fights are so cool. And I just think the reason that that's going down is because not only are these fights well choreographed, but they also just really focus on the moments, the beats of a fight. Really a fight when you're doing it with choreo, which, not to say that I'm an amazing stunt performer, but I have done some stunt work, and a lot of the times what makes fights good is the beats, the story moments. When we're fighting, we're not just fighting, we're telling a story with motion. And the thing that I think this show is actually doing really well is, I think between the script, the acting, and the direction, it all kind of is focusing on these moments that happen in between dialogue, which is what is making it a really strong show, I think. It's not just about what's being said, it's actually a lot of the times about what's not being said, and just little exchanges that happen in a moment, and it isn't afraid to like use that to tell the story. So good job, Ahsoka. Another thing that I think is really strong with this episode, and with all the episodes, is the costume design. The costume design is like crushing it, and just Balin's outfit in this, Ahsoka's outfit in this, like, oh, it's so good. Everyone taking their capes off. We just get a lot of really fantastic costume moments. And I gotta say, even though Ahsoka isn't, I don't know if she's really wearing a cape, it's like a shawl, but I gotta say, I love the fact that like almost everyone has a version of a cape. That's so great. I love capes, so I'm super here for that. Actually, even the droids look so good in this. I know it's not a costume, but like, I love how the ones that are serving Morgan, the gold droids with like their eyes, they look so evil. And I was like, they're just droids, but why do they look evil? They do. Hu Yang, I think, is going to be very disappointed next episode when he finds out that basically Ahsoka and Sabine immediately split after they left him. Also, I don't think he needs our protection with his forearms and fighting styles that he probably has in his memory banks stored there, but we must protect Hu Yang at all costs. He's definitely shaping up to be one of my favorite characters in the show. Ahsoka does get a badass moment, in case you were waiting for that. I left it for the very end. Her badass moment in this episode, I would say, is definitely when she's fighting Merrick, and she just walks through Merrick's spinning lightsaber. That was like, I was like, is she gonna just like walk? Oh my gosh, she just walked through that lightsaber and then was like, whatcha, you defeated. That was nuts. So all in all, I think this was a really, really strong episode. I really loved it. I can't wait to see where the show goes next, and I can't wait to learn more about Balin's skull. But I'm also very sad, because what will happen with Balin after this? I don't know. There's a moment in this episode where I thought maybe he was gonna die there, and I was kind of like, oh, that would be really sad because I want to like learn more about him. And then I was like, oh, but it's also still really sad because we don't have Ray Stevenson anymore. So that's unfortunate. That's really, really sucks. Anyways, but it was still a great episode, and Ray Stevenson was definitely a huge part of that. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Let me know what your favorite parts were. Let me know what your theories are for the next episode, where you think we're going. Do you think Thrawn's going to be here? Do you think Ezra's going to be here? What is going on? I want to know. Let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, friends, stay nerdy.